All right. I think I should be live here. So, welcome guys. Um I will make more of these videos as you guys have different questions and stuff that may be better addressed with a video in order to kind of help with the process of some of the things that you guys may not necessarily be familiar with. But if you guys have questions, make sure you type it in the chat here so I can address it now, because I'm sure if you have a question, then somebody else has a question as well. But in addition to that, if you guys have questions afterwards, make sure you just tag me or tag one of the officers. We'll be happy to help you guys. Some of you have already reached out about helping with your rosters and figuring out teams, and we're more than happy to help you with that. So yeah, please make sure that you do reach out if you have any questions or anything like that. But what we're going to go over today is a feature that they added, I want to say about 4 or 5 months ago, that makes it easier to get to, because previously we had this option for squads, and a lot of you may have seen. Actually, let me see if I can add the cursor so you guys can see where my mouse is. So I think there we go. Okay, so you should be able to see my mouse now, so you can see where I'm pointing to as I'm doing it. So the squads option, which is in the bottom right corner here, it was available previously. But the only way to get to it, you had to go into your arena, or you had to go into a cantina battle or something in order to get to the option where you can set up your squads. They now made it so that if you go to your characters, you can basically go directly to squads. And this is really helpful because it can help you set up all of the squads that you need for each of the different types of game modes. Grand Arena and Territory Wars, luckily because they're PvP oriented, will usually kind of lump in together. If you have teams that work better for GOTB, you can put those in there. Although a lot of mine are still just going to be the regular kind of arena teams, because those are the ones that I had the best gear on. And so that's how you'll kind of end up balancing that out. You can create tabs, and I'll show you guys how to do that. You can create tabs for each of the different raids if you want, and however you want to distribute it. Now, there is a limit on the number of teams that you can store, so you don't want to necessarily go overboard. You want to consolidate it so that you have the most useful tabs set up. So when you go to my squads, and I'm going to set up a different one, these ones are just for streaming purposes, so you can ignore these ones. These are teams that Jedi Consular Finn uses for streams. But the few that I'm using more than anything, right? So this is a 3v3 one that I have set up for when we had 3v3 Grand Arena. And so I had a bunch of 3v3 teams that I set. Some of them are incomplete, and I'll talk about that here. But you don't necessarily have to fill it with 5, even though if you go into edit one of these, it gives you the option to store 5. So you can store as many characters in each of these as you want. This is my 5v5, and I've basically done that. And then this is just kind of one that I was thinking about doing for Darkside GOTB if I found different teams in my 5v5, but I really haven't. So primarily I'm using this as my main base, and so this is kind of my default. So we're going to create a new tab here to basically start from scratch to show you guys what your process would be in order to save these different teams, so that for each Grand Arena and each Territory War, you don't necessarily have to reset it. You can set all of your teams now. And so the way to do that is when you go into squads, again, I'll start from the beginning just to kind of go through the whole process. You start at your main screen, you go to characters. Hold on, let me make sure it's clicked. Okay, there we go. So we'll go to characters first, right? And then in the bottom right, we have squads. So we'll go to squads there. Then what you'll do is likely you won't have all of these tabs, so you'll click the little plus sign here. The plus sign will let you name this whatever you want. So I'm going to call it, I called mine 5v5 because we know that there's like a 3v3 option. So that was my simplest name, but you can call it, if you want to create more game modes, right? You can call it Territory War Grand Arena, something like that, right? So you know what this tab is specifically for. So what you can do then is this thing right here, unique only, right, is the main key for everything that you're doing. So here is what unique only does for you. Let's start out with one of my basic teams, right? And that's going to be my Darth Revan team. So I'm going to go to Sith Empire, right? And we're going to add Revan, Bastila, HK, Malik, and Sith Trooper. So this is mine. I don't have Marauder, so he's not in there, so I'm using Sith Trooper. This is my standard Darth Revan team. Now, here is what unique only does for you. If you want to then create a new team, right, and assign a new team here. So the next line, you just go to assign. Notice how Darth Revan and Malik and HK are right at the top of this list, right? So you can see that these characters, it allows me, for example, to use them again, right? I don't want to do that because this confuses how I'm trying to set up my TW and my GA. And so this is why you want to keep it all in the same tab rather than separating them. And to what you're saying, Bing, I'll talk about how I do it. And this is the main reason for it, which is I keep TW, offense, and defense in the same tab. But there's something I do afterwards that I'll show you guys in terms of making sure you have defense and offense kind of controlled in your tab. So if you hit this little 3 lines thing in the top right, it gives you the option to delete. So I am going to delete this Darth Revan team because I don't want a second Darth Revan. So how do you make it so you don't have to remember every single character that you've used in a team and set up a new team that doesn't overlap? That's where unique only comes in. So if I click unique only and I now go to assign, you will see that Darth Revan, Malik, and HK are no longer here in the list, right? So that is why this unique only is really important as you're setting up TW and GAC to keep checked, because that will prevent you from double using characters. And then potentially if you use one team on defense and then you go to attack with offense, you might be missing one of the characters. And I had this happen before they added that feature. Like, it would just show up as red, so all of a sudden this team that I set up with 5 characters was suddenly 4. And it changed everything that I was trying to do, and I didn't even realize it until I went to pick it to do offense. So keep unique only on, right? And then just keep on building all of the different teams that you're using. So if we go to the next team, right? So next team, I'll put Jedi. Let's do Galactic Republic, right? So I'm still working on my Galactic Republic a little bit. My Padme is gear 10, right? So I might use her more on offense than anything else. So, but I do want to set up this team because she has 2 Zeta, she's gear 10, I have a lot of the other characters ready, right? So what I'm going to do is I am going to put the Padme team here with Anakin. We'll put Ahsoka, Kenobi, and Jedi Consular. So this is kind of like my offensive Padme team that I use. So if I save this team, right, and the reason I'm doing this is because of Kenobi in particular. Kenobi tends to be on most people's Jedi Knight Revan team, which is fine. He works really well on that Jedi Knight Revan team. I, however, do want to use my Padme team a little bit more as I'm working and building up this team. And so this is why I'm putting Kenobi here, so that when I go to the next team that I want to set up, which is my Jedi Knight Revan team, right? We'll go to Jedi. Kenobi does not show up on this list. So now I know that Kenobi is not there. I can now set up my Jedi Knight Revan team without Kenobi. So that team is going to be Jedi Knight Revan, Grandmaster Yoda, Fallen Bastila, Jolee, and Hermit Yoda. Right? So now I have this team. And you just kind of go through this process. Right? We can add next. Let's go to Bounty Hunters. Right? So I usually go with Jango, Bosk, Boba, Dengar, and then lately I've actually been adding Nest. So there we go. This would be another team that I'm working on setting up. And again, with the unique clicked, you're not going to overlap characters. That's the benefit of this. So you just keep on creating teams in order to get your roster basically filled out, right? So here's my first order team. And you can just keep on going. So here is another thing you can do, though. I am now going to go to my Rebels. Here is a team that I will usually use under squatted in Grand Arena Championships. And it's CLS, Han, Chewie, and 3PO. So this is one that I'm going to leave the fourth space blank, because I don't necessarily need a fifth character on this team when I use him. However, if I need to use a fifth, right, there's a team that's just relicked out of their minds, and I think this is still a good counter, like Bounty Hunters, for example. There could be a relicked out Bounty Hunter team. CLS is still a really strong counter against it. I don't necessarily want to take the risk of going undermanned, so I want to add a fifth. Make sure that you also understand how the team works. The reason I mention this is because of Chewie. Right, and in this case it's Chewie. Each of the different teams is going to vary a little bit. But with Chewie, Loyal Friend. With Loyal Friend, right, at the start of the battle, grant guard to the weakest ally and Han Solo. My team right now with those four of CLS, Han, Chewie, and 3PO has CLS with less health and protection than 3PO, which means that CLS gets the guard on this team. If you have a team like this CLS team and you're putting in something with the fifth, make sure that you know the mechanics, because if, for example, you put in like a Jin, let's say, right, and Jin is a rebel, she'll counterattack, all that kind of stuff. But if her health and protection is less than CLS, now CLS does not get the guard, instead Jin is going to get it. And so you don't want that with your team. That changes the team entirely. So when you do short man teams like this, make sure you do understand the mechanics, and you should do that with all the teams, of course. But make sure that you do understand kind of what's going on with those teams so that you can always make the different adjustments as you need. Another team here, I've been playing around with it a little bit more, so I'm just going to stick it in here, actually, just for the sake of adding it here, is this team. Then I'm working on my Grievous a little bit, and this team still lets me do a little bit of cleanup because I have a Gear 13 Grievous. It's not a super strong team, so it's not quite a counter to Darth Revan yet. I need to get some Zetas on T3 and all of that, but I'm kind of waiting for light side GOTB in order to do that. Typically, my Jedi Knight Revan is going to be my counter. The reason I'm doing that is then I can go to Resistance. Actually, I do want to take this out. Forgot. I don't like putting BB-8 on this team when it's not ready because he ends up destroying my Resistance team. So I'm going to do L3 because she is currently without a real team for me. Yeah, so we'll put L3 there. Then we'll go with Resistance. And we'll do Jedi Training Rey, BB-8, Resistance Trooper. We're going to go with Rey and Finn. And the reason I'm not using R2 is because I know there's another team that I'm going to use that is Clone Troopers. That is Rex, Fives, Echo. Then we'll go with R2 and Zeta Barris. All right, so this is another team. And again, you just go through your roster and you keep on creating these teams that you're going to set up. And you can keep some of them undermanned if you know that you're not necessarily going to be using all the characters, right? Or you don't necessarily need a fifth. So another example that I'm going to do right now is with my Sith. So with the Sith, I typically have a 4-man squad of Traya, Nihilus, Scion, Dooku, and I leave this last spot blank because sometimes, most of the time, I'll end up using Sith Assassin. Sometimes I'll use Savage. Sometimes I'll use Thrawn. And I leave the spot open because these are the main 4 that I need usually in order to take out like a Night Sister team. Or if I need to take out a Geo team, like this is the main 4. And every now and then I'll sub in, I'll just add a 5th just to be safe and distribute some of the damage, right? So again, undermanned team, make sure you understand what you're doing with your teams and you're kind of arranging it accordingly. And I am trying to go through all of my teams here so I can show you guys kind of what the next step is in terms of setting up your roster. And then now, after you do all of this, what other teams do I have left? I have the Old Republic team. So Karth, Canderous, Juhani, Mission, Zalbar. Okay, let's see, who else do I have? Let's put the Ewoks there, because the Ewoks are their own team. I'm not usually going to hodgepodge them with anything. Okay. My Jawas aren't ready, but I'll throw my Jawas in here. So I have the pre-made team kind of ready to go with them. Not this one. Where's Nebbit? This is Nebbit, right? Yep. There we go. So we have Jawas, just in case there's a weak Geos, because these are not quite ready for the good Geos yet. Although they have mods, but they're not really properly done. We'll go to Imperial Troopers, kind of another inclusive squad where I know kind of what my roster is. So I know these are going to be my 5 Imperial Troopers. I can take them out of the picture here. Let's see. I have a Rogue One squad. So potentially, right, if I go to the Rogue One, I could make a squad of these 5 of Jin, Chirrut, Baze, K2, and Cassian, right? And that could be a team. I know though that I use Chirrut and Baze in other teams as a plug-in for two characters, rather than doing this team, because the Rogue One team isn't super strong. So again, knowing your roster, trying to figure out how you want to distribute it, and this might be enough for now. I have a lot of plug-in characters that I can use and make other teams for. I mean, if I wanted to, we can go to Rebels, right? And I'll just throw this team in there because I have used it before. Wedge, Biggs, Princess Leia, Han, and Captain Han. And this is kind of like a little bit of a cleanup team, allows for a little bit of tanky, little heat, like res, those kind of things. So just some potential options here for teams. Now, when you get to offense and defense, here is why, again, I explained why I keep it on the same tab. Now, what do you do in order to separate offense and defense? When you click these 3 lines at the top right, you also get these arrows, right? These arrows is what I use in order to help differentiate between offense and defense. So what I use in order to separate offense and defense is actually the Revans. So because I put Darth Revan on defense, anything from Darth Revan to Jedi Knight Revan is going to be considered defense. Everything below Jedi Knight Revan is going to be considered offense, with Jedi Knight Revan being offense and Darth Revan being defense. You can set up whatever distinguishing team that you want. Whatever you know is your most offensive team is usually going to be your best kind of break line in order to help separate your offense and your defense. So this Padme team, like I said, I will usually keep on offense. So there we go. Bounty Hunter team is going to go on defense. So now it goes above Jedi Knight Revan. First Order team is going to be defense. So it goes above Jedi Knight Revan. CLS is going to be offense. Grievous is offense. This is offense. The Clone Trooper team is actually going to be a defensive team for me. Now, you can set this up with kind of a next level as well, because in Grand Arena, you're going to require more than probably 4 teams. At Division 1, you actually require 8 teams. So I will try to have 8 teams above Jedi Knight Revan here, so I know what my 8 defenses are. For Territory Wars, you only really need 4 with the way we do things in our guild. So what you can do is make sure that the top 4 are your main defensive teams. And then if we need anything at the end in order to kind of fill in a spot or anything like that, you know that you have your 5th and your 6th and whatever else ready to go afterwards, right? So Night Sisters is going to be a defensive team. So I'm going to move that up, right? So now I have all these teams kind of laid out. And I have 5 teams now, right? So which teams do I want to put? Well, more likely than not, I'm going to move the First Order out. And I think these are probably my strongest 4 defenses. So these are the 4 that I'll probably keep on defense. Then I have First Order here as the next one. We can have the Karth team. We can have the Geo team. Although I save Geos a little bit more now for offense and Territory Wars. So it's definitely going to be in kind of the lower rank of my defensive teams. Because it works well against a bunch of teams. Geos can actually really help in kind of a pinch, especially if we do, and hopefully we don't. Please stop doing it, turn meter loading. If we have turn meter loading teams, then Geos actually can really help with that. Ewoks are offensive. Jawas are offensive. I don't use my troopers on offense anymore, so I stick them on defense every now and then just because they're a little bit of a pain if you're not careful about it. right? So now I have, let's see, a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams, right? And then I have the other stuff, which is primarily offense, right? And now I have my distribution of my teams. So I can just hit the three lines in the top right. Now my tab is set. I don't really have to update these. I can if I want to change around teams, like adding Nest to the Bounty Hunter team, for example, is kind of a new addition. I used to use Greedo. So I went in there and edited it. And then now I also am playing around with L3 on the Grievous team as kind of an additional taunt. So there's a lot of different things you can kind of play around with. You don't have to, though. And once you set up this, every time you get to a GA or a territory war, right, when you can go there, when you go into the game mode, you have the option to go to your squads. And you just go to your tab, and you just select the teams that you want. And you've already arranged it so that the top 4 teams are your best defensive teams. So territory war starts. I put out the assignment in terms of what team you're on or what territory you're assigned to. And if you have the 4 squads ready, just place your 4 teams on defense. If you're not ready to put your 4 teams or whatever on defense, like you feel like you can't quite do 4, you want to do a little bit less, then just pick your top 3, talk to your territory. Maybe they can provide some extra teams in order to balance it out. And if they can't, the people in T1 and T7 can help, because like you can see, I have defensive teams that I'm not using that I could easily stick on there. I can stick my Geos. I can stick my Karth team. So there are people in T1 and T7 that can help out if people in the back don't feel like they have 4 teams. They only have 3 teams, or they have 2 teams, and they want to do a little bit more on offense this time, or whatever it is, right? We want to work collectively as a guild, but the biggest thing is knowing what your roster is and how many defensive teams you can place. This is the way that you want to do it, by setting up this tab. And this tab will then help you in GAC, because you can then figure out exactly what teams you have to place on defense. And the only question you'll have to answer is, where do you want to place these different teams? And you can play around with the strategy. You want to put Bounty Hunters in the front, Revan in the back, or Revan in the front, Bounty Hunters in the back, Night Sisters in the back, whatever. Right? You have all of your strategy that you can work on now that you have your teams defined. And so that's the way that you want to set up your roster. And then when it comes down to offense time, you'll hit your marker right here, and you'll see that you have your Jedi Knight Revan team. You have kind of, in my case, a weaker Padme team. So I might be able to use this against kind of a weak, maybe not fully developed Darth Revan team. I have my CLS team. I have this kind of makeshift droid team that can help me take out like kind of a broken up Darth Revan team. So usually what I try to do is use the Padme team for one part and at least try to kill something, and then go in with the droids and try to do another one. And my Jedi Knight Revan team is the kind of my main Darth Revan killer, although it's not super consistent, but it'll usually take out a lot of the team if I need to. So Bing talking about Nest options. Yeah, I can talk quickly about the Nest options. So Nest has a few different teams that she can go on. She works really well with the Bounty Hunters. So difference in TW and GAC. TW does not give you any bonuses for any undermanned teams, right? You can have an undermanned team, but you really don't get any bonus points. It's more about how many teams are surviving at the end of the battle. So going in undermanned with Nest against Ewoks really doesn't help you. It does in GAC, but not TW. So Nest right now is going onto a lot of GAC bounty hunter teams, because in TW she's not utilized, and at the real higher ends, Ewoks are not being put on defense because there's just too many counters to the Ewoks. So Nest is being put on the bounty hunter team so she can get that bonus speed. If you are in a division that's seeing a lot of Ewoks for GAC, then you can keep Nest separate, and you can plug in like a Greedo on this team instead of Nest, right? And then you have your team set up, right? So you there's different ways that you can set it up. Nest is really nice in terms of a plug-and-play character, so you can always put her in different spots. And we'll go through kind of the leftover characters, but Nest can also go under a Kira lead. Nest can go under a Farm Boy Luke lead. Nest can go on a Night Sister team. Nest can go on a First Order team. She is the most versatile character in the game, I would say. Just she is the most versatile. She can fit on any team pretty much, because she provides something in just the fact that she's super survivable. So that is kind of the main thing about Nest. Same thing with Wampa, although Wampa isn't quite as survivable. So when we get down to this point, right, you'll see what I have are a lot of what I'm going to consider kind of plug and play characters, right? And I took Nest out here. Thrawn can fit on a bunch of different teams because Fracture is, I would say, top 2 in the best abilities in the game. It's close with Isolate. So Fracture can be used on a bunch of different teams. So whenever you feel like there's some kind of issue going on, Thrawn is a good plug and play. EP Vader I leave here because I can put them on a Sith team, I can put them in an Empire team. Really kind of varies on what I'm facing, so I'm not in any real kind of hurry. I put L3 on that droid team, but you could go with a what's it called? I'm forgetting the name of the solo mechanic. What is the solo mechanic called? Where is it? Prepared. That's what it is. You can put it on a prepared squad. With Kira, Nest, Vandor, Chewie, young Han, young Lando, right? That can be your prepared team. So a prepared team can also do well in as one of the teams that you worked on if you worked on those other characters. I haven't, and so Vandor Chewie kind of sits out a little bit. I'm trying to find a good use for him, but that's what you can look at. It's like a prepared team for that. Wampa, a good plug-and-play character. Farm Boy Luke, good lead for Nest in order to boost her tenacity so she doesn't get dazed. He probably will die, though, so you're doing it just to get the extra tenacity, unless you have some kind of taunt to go along with this team. Savage can actually do a lot solo if you have his Zeta, because he gains a lot of heals over time and just increases his survival. Chirrut and Baze, a really nice duo plug-and-play. Old Ben, a really good plug-and-play tank. Right, so you're seeing all of these teams, or all these characters kind of being left over. And this is what you can then use in order to do a cleanup squad. Right, so when you get your cleanup squad going, you'll know kind of what characters you have, and you want to use them based on their abilities in order to plug and play. But for most people at the top, the characters that you have that are most likely going to be your main plug and plays, Thrawn, Nest, Wampa. Right? Those are going to be your 3 main plug and play characters. Yeah, Bing, you can do Kira, Vandor, L3, Mission Zalbar if you don't have the Karth team. So if you don't have Karth Canderous, then you can change the Karth team that I have here and basically replace these 3 with Kira, Vandor, Chewie, and L3. Right? So you can that was kind of the original team as well. Karth is still good, although some people do more Kira now because First Order can counter Karth a little bit. So it's always kind of changing, right? So, but if you guys need help with setting up teams, just let me know. But this is how you use the squads, right? So again, you create a tab. Make sure you click unique only. Create all of your teams. Just run through these, create your teams. You can expend as much of your roster as you want. Right? You can go through and keep trying to make team after team after team. The reason I don't is because I do have some spots that are plug and play, so I don't necessarily want to exclude particular characters that I know I might fill in, like a Thrawn or something like that. So I won't put Thrawn on a team, for example. Although I know that if I face like a Traya team, Thrawn and Magma is a combo that I would use. Right? But we don't typically see Traya on defense anymore, but this would be a combo that I would use in order to take out a Traya team. So this is also something you can do, right? And you can make these little mini teams where you don't really care about what is in the other spots. This duo is the main team. Then you can just throw whatever remaining taunts that you have on there. You could throw Royal Guard, Poe, and I don't know, something else. So set up your roster like this, right? Create all of your different teams, your main defense, your main offense. You'll still have plenty of characters left over, so when you're fighting, you can do hodgepodge teams and makeshift teams in order to kind of attack particular things. And then, like, for example, you could do a EP, Vader, Thrawn, and I use this team quite often, actually. Tarkin and TFP. Where's my TFP? Oh, I missed him. There he is. Right? So this is kind of a standard Empire team that I'll use against a Karth team or a Padme team. This team actually works out pretty well against it. I just don't leave it predefined because EP and Vader are really flexible as a duo, and I don't necessarily know where exactly I'm going to use them. So I can kind of play around with it a little bit. So hopefully this helps you guys with how to set up the different teams within the squads option. Again, just really quick to show you how you get to that. You go from your main screen, you click on characters, you get to squads in the bottom right, and then here you go, right? All of your squads, you can set it up. You can create different tabs if you want for GOTB. I have some stream tabs here, so you can ignore those. But I also have one for 3v3 that helps me distribute my 3v3 teams, right? So however you guys want to do it, use this in order to organize your teams, and it should help you a lot with time that may be required in order to put teams on defense in Grand Arena, put teams on defense in TW, finding teams that you want to use in offense in both of those. This should be able to help you. All right, so hopefully this was helpful, guys. The next one I'm going to do is going to be next week because I'm going to be out of town starting tomorrow until Monday, and then I'm doing kind of a Borderlands long stream on Monday. So probably on Tuesday or so, I'm going to do a video about mods, how to set up your mods really quick at the beginning. I shouldn't say quick. The first time you set up your mods, it may take a little while. But after the first time, if you're not constantly worried about having like the top mods and everything, you just want to make it so that your team is reasonable, your next steps are going to be a lot easier to manage. And so we'll talk a little bit more about mods and how mods can be a little bit more controllable for what you want to do. So you don't necessarily have to go over investing in mods. You do need to invest in mods a little bit because they are such a critical part of the game, but we can try and make it so it's not a huge workload after the first time. But you will have to do an initial load, just to kind of let you know off the bat that you will have to do a little bit of work at the beginning in order to mod up these teams that you put here. But then afterwards, it'll be easier to maintain. So with that, I'll go ahead and sign out. And again, if you guys have questions, feel free to tag me or any of the officers. We'll be glad to help you. If you have any questions about what teams you should set up, what issues you're having, right, we'll be glad to help you guys. So I will sign out for now, and let's have a good TW.